And hello, everyone. I believe we're good to go. It is Saturday night. It is time to talk anime. We're here to talk about anime. Hey, John, good to see you.
Hey, hey.
Solid Combi.
Oh,
Good to see
not
you.
that John, sorry.
Hey.
I'm like, hey, how you doing?
Hey.
Hello, Steve
I
and John as well.
saw you. Yes.
Yeah. So we are here to talk about anime. Good, appreciate that, John. Right here. We're here to talk about anime. Get to the news a little later on. We got some fun news stuff to talk about. We also have coming up in a little bit. We are going to do our spring anime season draft, where we're all going to go in and pick what anime we think is going to be popular next season. Yep, and we'll see how it goes moving into the spring season.
Hilariously.
Exactly, yes, because we're all experts on what's popular.
And just in case everybody missed it, we end winter tonight.
That's right.
Oh.
That's right.
We start,
Officially.
what is it, 2 a.m.? We start on to spring.
Yes.
Oh,
Spring
boy.
forward, change your clocks.
Mm-hmm.
Lose an hour of sleep.
Yeah. Gain an hour of sunshine. I will take that in the evening.
Yeah, I guess.
Okay.
I'd rather have this sleep. The sun can take care of itself. Let me get some sleep.
Fair enough. All right. Let us get to talking then, because in case it wasn't obvious, we're talking about Dead Leaves. The anime film, which is definitely, as we like to say, a thing. Where to begin? I had not seen Dead Leaves before watching it this week. I definitely heard about it. I'd had people had recommended it to me and so forth, but I had not actually watched it through. Just seen like clips and such. How about you guys? What exposure had you had?
Zero. Zero at all.
So, much like you, I've known about it. I've just never watched it. And on the Roku, I have Canopy. For those of you who don't know what that is, Canopy is through your library, and you can rent movies and stuff for free through it, and without the annoying ads. And so for years, and it was actually as part of the animation rotation, which is a very small handful of animation, just not just anime with other stuff. And so it's always been there, and I was like, oh, that looks interesting. The title card looks interesting, but I never watched it. And then, then we did it. We're going to do it for this week. And then, so the one time I was going to watch it, of course, it moved off of Canopy this week. So I went over to the Tubi to watch it, and then I watched it, and I didn't feel so bad about not having watched it. And,
Yeah. We might not be the target audience for this movie. Just gonna throw that one out there to begin with.
No.
I think the target audience of this movie is 12-year-old boys. It's a...
Which now they're like in their mid-20s. So,
No, I think this is for people who are always 12-year-old boys.
Perpetually 12.
Yes.
Oh.
It is spastic. It moves quickly.
Yes.
It is downright puerile a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Ultraviolence is involved.
Ultraviolence is very much involved.
Yeah.
A lot of goofy death.
Yeah.
Not quite goofy death, but a lot of just death that just kind of happens and we move on. Action movie kind of death.
Right.
And it's weird. So, for backstory, this is the crew that worked on things like Furikuri, went on to work at Studio Trigger on stuff like I think Darling in the Franxx is actually what this reminds me of the most of Trigger's work. Kill la Kill as well, definitely. Kill la Kill has that kind of goofy, over the top, violent kind of thing.
Right.
But this is much more heavily like visually stylized, and I think it's one of the things that kind of jumps out at you first. It has this sort of almost 80s, 90s comic feel to it.
Yeah. Well, just that image that you've got right there.
Yeah.
Haruka doesn't have. She's got her classic Vespa, but by the time you get IG moving into progressive and alternative Fooly Cooly, you have that car
Oh wow. Okay.
is in there.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
flying car, and it's
Go.
here we are. I'm like, hey, cross pollination with Lord Conti head
Yeah.
TV guy. I'm like,
Yeah.
there you go.
Definitely.
So yeah, so when I was watching it, like I was saying to you guys earlier, I was like, "Oh, this is Penny Stocking Garter Belt," and it's the same director, and I was like, "Oh, so that's what this is." And in the first 30 seconds, when I realized what the animation was,
Yeah.
and I was just like, going, "Okay, now I know what kind of ride I'm in for," and that
Yeah.
wasn't necessarily wrong, and and don't get me wrong, there were elements that I liked, some of the action stuff and things like that, because I'm a huge Fooly Cooley fan, and there was definitely elements I was like, oh yep, there's Lord Conte, oh yep, the gun scene, when they're both blasting away at each other. There's so many scenes like that, Fooly Cooley, and I did
Thank
enjoy
you,
this.
Toonami and Adult Swim.
Right, exactly, and I was like, and I enjoyed the soundtrack, but the soundtrack was very 90s to me. But of course, this was in 2004.
Yeah.
But of course, the first time that I tried to watch it on Thursday night, after having been up since 5 a.m. and then couldn't sleep, it was 2:30 a.m. and I was like, going, okay, I might as well just go ahead and watch this. I was going to watch it on Friday, so started watching at 2:30 a.m. And after a while, it's like when you get that tired ADD kind of attention deficit disorder thing going on, and it just turned into like all these colors are shouting at me. Why? Because everything's moving so fast, and you're just so tired. You're just like, oh, why do they hate me so? Why are they yelling? Where did that gun come from? Holy crap!
Yeah.
Yep.
So then, so I gave up and I watched it the next day. But it reminded me of a lot of different stuff, and it's kind of like, to me, I guess the best way for me to sum it up is this is what Fooly Cooley would have been if if the adults from Guy Next didn't come in and actually, did their thing.
Yeah, there were no adults in the room when it was being made.
None
Yeah, that's
whatsoever.
None whatsoever. No.
None.
And it's interesting. It does kind of feel like like the first draft of Fooly Cooley, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like it's some of those ideas are there, sort of, kind of, but it lacks the subtle sophistication of, I don't know.
Well, I was waiting for a description of it being like, oh, this was like, the test bed for a lot of ideas, and a lot of the animators came together at IG, and they were throwing this stuff together, and this was going to be like, how they were going to work out some of the mechanics of things to come on. But I've not heard anybody say that yet. I'm like, this insanity is just because. I'm like, okay, anime.
Yeah, and no, literally anime, because I looked at the running time of it, and it was like 55 minutes. I'm like going, oh God, here we go. We're in for the ride. And there's a great line in this movie which really sums this movie up, where Panda, the woman character, says, I just don't really care anymore. I'm going to walk out now. Literally, that's what she says. And I'm like going, actually, that's not a bad idea.
Yeah. She had another similar line that was something happened. She goes, I just can't be surprised anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah.
It's a deeply weird anime. It's in a deeply weird universe.
Yeah.
So, I mean, on the one hand, and I kind of want to get back to what you're talking about with the animation sequences, because it's weird. I love animation as animation. I love the art form itself. And Dead Leaves kind of teetered on the brink for me, where some of the sequences were stunningly gorgeous, and some of them were so chaotic, I couldn't really follow the action effectively. Where because it was all because there are no shadows, in the sense that any shadow is solid black, right? They don't do graded shadows on things, and that makes it hard to parse in a lot of ways. And for me, there's a thing in that where I have friends who liked the live-action Transformers movies because they were so chaotic they wanted to be able to go back to it over and over again and like pause it to be able to tell what was going on. They preferred a lack of clarity, which, okay. And I think,
this would have kept them pleased for the next 10 years.
Exactly, yes. That's very much what this is, where there's almost too much to visually parse, and you would have to watch it over and over again to really understand, okay, that person's shooting at that thing.
Right.
There were moments where I did have to stop it, rewind it, and just because there was so much chaos, visual chaos going on, that you literally, visual doesn't cause sound, but you literally, there was so much going on that you couldn't hear like what the characters were saying sometimes.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have to stop and just kind of just really focus on listening to what the characters are saying, and then you realize that it didn't really matter, and then but the animation was on the certain parts when it wasn't chaotic, but when it was just really like actually for a change being formative, like going from one sequence to the other, because that's the other part of the problem with this movie is that it doesn't go from sequence to sequence very well at all, like at all. But the strange animation that I thought was the best animation was the actual caterpillar at the end. Yes, you heard that right, folks, who haven't seen this. Yes, there is a giant caterpillar of cosmic death at the end of the movie, which results in the birth of the Bodhisattva out of Panda.
Yep.
Yes.
With a 45.
Yes. Already in hand.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Legos for whatever.
Yeah. Which oddly is like a thing in Gundam. So it's very weird that like that kind of became a big thing in Gundam. I don't know why, where that. But yeah.
Apparently, I'm not watching the right Gundam for that thing to happen.
It's very interesting. But yeah.
Well, I agree with Steve that, and certainly with you, Brent, where it's like there's so much visually going on that after probably about the first 20 minutes, which is that's a good solid 1/3 of the film. I stopped, stopping and trying to figure out, and then just getting, I sort of got, I thought kind of the message was the chaos that you're seeing is meant to be that way. You have to let that wash over you. You can come back. You can come back and watch the thing in its entirety, and then you'll pick up some more nuances, but you just, it's not possible to stop at every few minutes and then try and decode what's going on. That at a certain juncture you just go, you know what, wash, just let the river flow. I'm gonna let this thing wash over me and be like, okay, I'm gonna see the connected points that you've got, and I'm gonna see how IG has used some of these things in other places and how things have influenced this in and of itself, and just try and grasp the totality of it as it's doing its thing.
just to warn you folks, as
that
you
reminds me
let
of the
this thing,
gorillas.
Yes.
I was like, hey,
I'm happy.
I'm feeling that got sunshine.
a song about heroin. Okay. So as you're watching this, folks out in Chatland who haven't seen this, as you're watching this and you're letting it wash over you, just make sure that you have your hand outstretched because you're going to drown. You need your hand out there to grab the branch that you're eventually going to need to grab, because it is just.
And to that point, I started watching this on Tubi, and then ended up switching over to. I actually had a copy, and so I watched it that way. And the copy I had, Tubi was dubbed. The copy I had was subbed. I much prefer the dub on this. Not necessarily for a quality reason back and forth. I think I heard pluses and minuses on both sides of the English and Japanese dub.
Right.
There's some anyway. But that chaos thing, it's really hard to pick out what's going on and read the subtitles and notice what's going on.
That is
true. I found it a lot easier. And again,
could you even read the subtitles with everything going on? I mean, and I don't mean just being able to read the words.
You
could you see the words?
Yes.
Could you even see it?
Yes, which I was glad the sub I watched, actually, they made really good efforts to make sure that it was very contrast to the background.
Yes.
So it wasn't like lost somewhere in the back there.
Yeah, and it's it's very and they do a they also did a good job of timing, where you're able to see what's going on. You're able to it's not like holding things on the screen, logging people are talking, all that kind of good stuff, which is really nice. You know what's going on. But yeah, it's I don't know. We're dancing around the plot
as you focus on this thing.
Exactly.
Like,
no,
oh my,
that's the thing.
There's so much being not said right now.
Yeah,
that we have to wait another hour and 20 minutes or hour 40 minutes for, because it's just there is other stuff going on, and it's just really not worth mentioning, but it's really part of just what's happening.
And we should say there are some very adult sequences.
Very.
I mean, nobody wants to like jump the gun here and be the butt of the joke. You know what I mean? It's enough said.
Oh.
I've had my moment. Thank you. Wait a minute. What? Brett's gonna hit the mute button? No. The history erase button.
This has been Geek Archaeology.
Oh no.
Yeah, it's and one of the reasons I'm not like advancing through a lot of this is because there's shots in here I can't show you. I gotta be careful of that.
Which I mean, and this is the part where you're 100% correct. This is like a 12-year-old's humor.
Yeah,
it is.
I mean, there's no really plot-wise. There's no point to this.
Nope.
So it's just like, oh, let's just do toilet jokes. It's just funny. Like, really?
But you're right. There is no point to this. This is one of those things when they describe a movie or a show or something where they say, "Did this have to be made?"
Mm-hmm.
Why was it? Nobody asked for this, because nobody asked for this.
Mm-hmm.
This did not need to be made.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
by the way, I'm not saying it's the worst thing I've ever seen. Because,
well, but I mean, in a general plot standpoint, it's like mind you, I can't off the top of my head remember the names, but there are plots out there that are, such and such place. There's people that are imprisoned, and then there's a faction involved that's either on the outside trying to get in to find information, or on the inside trying to get out. Mm-hmm. Chronicles of Riddick comes to mind. It's not an anime, but you know what I mean. So it's like the plot elements are all like fairly decent. I mean, it's understandable, but just the eating and the after eating thing is just like. It doesn't advance.
That's the best way we can put it
whatsoever.
No.
That's the best way we can put it before 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
This also brings up one of my significant criticisms with it, is that it is action movie to an extreme level, where you have our main characters and they're the only ones that are allowed to be competent. Everyone else just is sort of along for the ride and whatever. And then you have villains who are arbitrarily skilled. And can just, and the villain at the end can just keep up with them for reasons.
They're very generic in that respect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You also have some problematic action movie cliches around treatment of women. And around how women are portrayed visually in this. There's a lot of pointless fan service. And but in your face. Which just kind of gets to you after a while.
But
fan service sells,
right?
if you're gonna I suppose if you're gonna look at for basic funding, it's like fan service sells, so you throw it in there.
But did you guys notice I felt like the elephant character a little bit in the movie, or where he sits around when they're, how do you even say this? When they're in their cell and they're figuring out how to get out of their straitjackets.
Yes.
Anyway, so as that happens, another thing happens that I can't talk about before 10 o'clock. And another thing happens, and this poor elephant is looking at the thing that's happening in front of him, and he's just like, no, please, that's not right. Just please stop. Please. No, don't. And that's kind of how you feel about some of this stuff. You're just like, did we really have to have that entire 5-minute segment there of the tube?
If you're 12, yes.
If you're 12, I guess. Because we need to know the mechanics of the tube.
Yeah. It's weird, and because like there is a fair amount of plot in this. There's backstory to the characters. There's stuff that happens, and there's stuff that does unfurl over the course of the story, which was interesting. I wouldn't call it like mind blowing, but by action movie standards, right? That's the kind of stuff you're looking for. It's cool.
Yeah,
stuff.
I could have used a little more depth on like the operation of things and stuff, but yeah, as a Michael Bay explosion experience, yes, you just need the basics.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Nothing fancy.
Yeah, totally.
Did any of you get reminded by Guard 666, the green one, the thin green one?
Mm-hmm.
Did he remind you at all a little bit about the guy from the hero in Red Line? The guy with the huge
didn't
Pompadour?
cross me, but possibly,
the big pompadour. Yeah, with the big pompadour.
I have not seen Red Line yet, so I can't speak to that.
Okay. Kind of reminded me of that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah.
So this movie is going to remind you of a lot of things, and they could be real, imagined, fever dream, whatever. It's just
Yeah, and it's one of the things about it is that it is very much kind of pastiche of various action movie cliches and sci-fi cliches and so forth, which is not a complaint. That's what most action movies are. Yeah, totally.
Which again, as I said, my concept is like, is this an experiment thing?
Yeah.
Like just putting things together here?
And that's what it feels like. It feels very much like, granted, it is clearly an animation experiment more than anything else. Let's come up with a really unique style and see if we can sustain that for an hour, and they do.
Yeah.
And they somehow dug the manga with which to do it with. Because this came from a manga.
Okay, yeah.
Which I've never heard of before. I didn't even know that it was.
I'm going to assume stylistically it's one for one, right? Or is it?
Well, the cover art from what I've seen is different. But I don't know. Beyond that, I don't know anything about the.
Interesting.
About the manga.
Give me a moment. I'm now Googling. Wow, there is very little available. All the screenshots are of the anime. That's interesting. I wonder.
Come on, somebody have a manga.
There we
go.
Well, no, that's.
Well, no, the cover art that you see see that's kind of different from the movie of where you see the guy's head in the TV screen but his hair, he's got hair in it on his face. Like when you're looking at the that's the manga.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, that's the manga.
Okay.
If I remember correctly.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay, it's visually slightly different, but it's not like radically different.
Right. Yeah. Huh.
Interesting.
It's fascinating. Yeah, it's tough. Like, I want to give this. Well, it's complicated. Like, I want to give this movie and I do give this movie high marks for its animation, for its inventiveness, for its experimentation, but nothing else.
It was entertaining.
Yeah. It was entertaining, and well,
you're not going to sit back and like write like a 30-page paper and be like, this is in the history of visual arts and animation. This film no, probably not. But it's like it was I enjoyed it enough for the time period. If it had been a 2-hour film, I think that might have really started to wear on my visual cortex. Be like, oh boy.
Yeah, I didn't enjoy it personally.
Really?
No.
I was okay with it. I found it entertaining for what it was, but I will say that if you're not 12 years old, or even if you're in a age body, but you're still mentally 12 years old, you're gonna have to be in a certain mood to watch this. You can't. This is not an anime that you're just gonna go, oh, here we go. I'm just gonna take it off the shelf and pop it in, and there we go, and it's gonna be fine. And it's not standard, it's not anything, it's very experimental. It's like, here's your budget, let's see what kind of whacked out animation that you guys can do.
Well, on the first
we're not gonna really and like I said, the first time I watched it, of course I was exhausted and just like just like I just like going, did I really do it? Did I just dropped acid or
Did I do
heroin?
that?
Did I, is this real? Anyway, but it was entertaining to a point, and then it just when the Bodhisattva is born and you see the arm and the hand,
Well, man,
and you realize
did
where it's
people,
come
when they initially encountered Fully Cooley through Toonami, did they glom to it initially? Or was
Yeah.
it the repetition of it, the discussion of people being like, did you see this really screwed up thing?
So,
No, what-
And then people
no.
started to watch it, you know what I mean? Then it sort of gained its own traction. Dead Leaves, I beyond art, watching it, I had never heard of it ever.
yeah.
No, well, Fully Cooley was, or Fully Cooley, however you want to pronounce it.
FLCL.
FLCL,
is,
yeah.
Yeah.
We're losing Steve again.
Oh,
there we go.
it's, okay, cool.
You're good.
Anyway, so I lost my train of thought because it's so bizarre. Anyway, so the Fully Cooley was when people got into it on the Toonami, the animation was so different than what Toonami was showing at that time because it was very crisp, it was very clear, and people were really enjoying it. The backgrounds were minimalist at the time. Like when you watch the first episode, you realize how minimal it is.
Right.
And it's Gainax, so you see like a little Shinji clone at first, and you're like going, oh god, what are we in for? And compounded with the Pillows doing the soundtrack, which fits the first season so well, and people really bought into it,
And
right off the bat.
And it's interesting because I know Fully Cooley was extremely popular amongst otaku when it first came out. It did not hit beyond that sort of core, hardcore otaku market until it hit Toonami. And I think you're absolutely right, John, that there was a repetition cycle where it sort of grew in popularity. Until that point, like if you were a hardcore Gainax file, you love Fully Cooley. Otherwise, you're like, oh yeah, it's that weird thing the Gainax did. Like I made whatever, right?
Well, because I know Toonami just ad nauseum played at, and it's like, and this is not a bad thing. This is not a bad comment. The same, because if it hadn't been on that loop for things, I would not have gotten to see the first Cowboy Bebops. So you know what I mean? So at the time, it's like I needed it to be on that kind of loop so I could hit the first Fully Cooley episode and be like, I'm not sure what I'm looking at, and then see it again and be like, okay, sure, give it to me, give me a little wing on that one,
Well,
and then it built from there.
Yeah, I mean, it was easy for them to loop it because it was a 6-episode arc,
right?
And that was it. But when you buy the actual like DVDs, as he points, they have an interesting commentary in there, like the audio commentary. One of the commentaries is about bullying, and they go on for like 40 minutes.
Wow.
About Manami being bullied. And and the guy who wrote it is talking about, well, this is actually a person. This actually happened. What was happening to her, we saw happen. So this is, so the whole thing. So it's kind of interesting how we just went from Dead Leaves to Fully Cooley. That's what we know to talk about before 10 o'clock.
But that's the kind of traction I wonder. It's like, having just seen this one time through, it's like it was entertaining enough. I wonder, if it was on constant loop, would I like come back to it at some point? Okay, it was entertaining, but now what depth am I supposed to get out of this? What, now that I've let it wash over me, what am I picking out that I missed?
Yeah. Folks in chat are mentioning things like Aeon Flux, and that put to mind of Liquid Television.
Yeah.
And this definitely feels like something that if it had been on Liquid Television, every month,
Liquid
just recycling again over and over again, it would be a cult classic in no time.
The Max, Dog Boy.
Yeah.
Aeon Flux.
Which, boy, for those of you who've seen Aeon Flux, I welcome you to go back and rewatch it, because the animation has, it's weird. On the one hand, like, it's still remarkable, but it also, like, hasn't aged the way I thought it had aged. It's very distinctive.
And so aged not well, or because at the time the fluidity of the motion, I was just like, holy crap, these people are like enormously tall and gaunt, but still entirely flexible. Amazing.
Yes. It's just very different. I guess part of the problem is we have so much animation now. It doesn't look as remarkable as it used to.
Yeah, that I could easily
Yeah.
say.
And also it is. I think you can see the flaws in the animation easier now. Whereas
Okay.
before it was just not as obvious because it was so new and because it was so different and so forth. And all the animation has flaws. I'm not, I'm not complaining. I'm just saying just the unique, you know, the way the characters were moving. Sometimes you're like, that's an odd angle for that elbow, stuff
Yeah.
like that. Where it's like, okay, they just got things a little bit off here and there, and it's just more obvious because it is it's a style you can kind of look at now. But
Well, that's not a Spumco Ren and Stimpy production. That's just terrible.
yeah, and man, Dead Leaves. It's just weird. There's just. So yeah, I can't think of anything else to say about Dead Leaves again without getting into like the
10 o'clock
yeah
discussion.
the more adult stuff. But even there, it's like this thing happens. That was weird. That thing happens. That was weird. Okay, there's just like there's not much to really.
I mean, we covered that's unnecessary fillage for this show because it doesn't have anything to do with the main plot. Why Pandy has a red eye, why there's things going on, why there's a crazy half cyborg topless lady doing stuff, like, so a feeding and extraction tube segment is just minutes of puerile hilarity, toilet humor, and it doesn't provide any necessary plot elements to help you get to the end of the film, which don't really, wrap up any of the plot elements anyway, particularly.
So let's end on this. Did you find the experience, for lack of a better word, fulfilling? Like did you feel at the end like, I got through a plot and I got enough out of this?
No.
I did.
Okay.
But
No.
that's because after having seen it, that's where I dialed in. I went to my anime list and I'm like, production IG. I know I've seen stuff. And I started scrolling through and I'm like, okay, now I'm starting to make some sense about where I'm seeing some of the elements in this. It doesn't excuse the totality of the thing that it is, but at least I have some threads to work with that I could be like, okay, I got you. You're doing the thing because somebody gave you money, and so you did the thing, and that there's elements of that that are sort of bled out through different projects that either production IG has had hands in directly, or subsidiaries of them, or parts of Gynax people have had. I mean, it's like, so it's interesting to see the thread work, and I'm always willing to see something of that nature, and then so I was entertained enough and curious enough. So.
I was entertained. I got the plot.
Are you not entertained?
Are you not entertained by feeding tubes? Anyway. But
yes, but not in the way you expect.
And alternative uses. So
No one said suction. I mean, what?
What?
You were saying, Steve?
So and John, like you, I enjoyed like the threads, like immediately going into it. Oh, this reminds me of this. Hey, this is like this. Hey, bum, and things like that. But I think what it is that, like I said, you have to be in a certain mood and you have to be in a certain place to mentally want to watch this and take it for what it is. Now, if I went into this knowing that this was going to be, hey, this is a thing that's, as we're all saying, that somebody threw money at, and they're doing all this experimental stuff, and they're kind of loosely tying it all together as best they can, then I would have gotten a different experience. If I think I knew what I was going into, then I think I probably would have gotten. I think I would have had a better resolution of it. But it's just that when you see the Bodhisattva last for all of 5 minutes, and you're just like and taking on the galactic caterpillar of chaos, doom, and death.
I felt
Yes, people, wrap your minds around that sentence.
Yeah.
I felt
then
unsatisfied. Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah, no, I was just gonna say if you knew that that's what you were getting into, then I think you would find the answer to your question being yes. But since that was not for me, the answer is no.
I felt unsatisfied because I was totally into this and I was totally cool with it and I was on board with it for about 20 minutes. And then it just became kind of the same thing over and over and over again. To me, I was not on board with this for an hour. If this had been a 20-minute experimental film, I totally would have been like, okay, cool. But the fact that they explored basically no new ground other than the weird butterfly caterpillar ending thing, which was lovely. It just felt like a waste of budget. It felt like we've got this style, we're doing this thing, and then we're just gonna keep on doing this thing and doing this thing to fill up an hour. That was my problem. It just felt there wasn't enough there in the totality of it versus everything else. So I got bored, frankly. I guess was my problem. But yes, it's a oddball experimental anime film, and it's very interesting for that.
Now, for the things that you've seen about it, I mean, why? As simple as that question is,
What do you mean?
like, why? I mean, there was obviously a manga, so they got this idea, they got the money, they did the thing, and were they Fully Cooley had 6 episodes, 6-episode OVA, so it wasn't going to be 12. Progressive and Alternative were themselves longer because of the success of the short OVA run. Was Dead Leaves supposed to be something? Was it supposed to be like our calling card to some great new thing? Was it supposed to be the entry gate into other like property based off Dead Leaves? I mean,
no. From what I understand, and this is like hearsay of hearsay of hearsay of some guy on Usenet said he heard this thing from who knows, but from what I understand, this was the people at the people kind of surrounding Gainax who don't go on to form Trigger, who really wanted to showcase that anime was more than just Outlaw Star. That it was more than just the standard anime style, the standard anime approach. And they wanted to, I wouldn't say necessarily, but they probably wanted to push the medium forward, but they wanted to kind of break with tradition and do something wildly different. And Dead Leaves, again, is sort of a manga property. It's like, oh, this is something we can do something with, probably because it is not, Akira, right? It's not like in the public eye. We can kind of go off in a weird direction. But I don't think that this was, that Dead Leaves itself as a franchise, was really intended to go anywhere. It was more experimental laboratory where they kind of throw things out there and then say, hey, here's the thing we made that's really weird and interesting.
A shout in the darkness and a look at this.
So
Which
like
then, to that degree, it did the thing. It's wildly interesting looking.
Well, and that's what I mean. If you had told me that this was going to be like Black Magic 66, which was really just about design. It's an anime about design. The story really didn't matter. It was just about design, and if you were able to, if you were okay with that, then you got what you wanted.
Look at this cool
look at this cool stuff going on. But those were only like 30, 40 minutes. And then you have this thing that was like, I don't think there was any intention to make it a franchise whatsoever. And now that we're kind of going to this territory.
God.
Yeah, going to this territory. I think what it became more about was just literally just, we're doing this thing as a different style of animation, as you're saying. And then we're going to see where we can take pick this up and take it from. And then these other things came from. So the positive of Dead Leaves is that other stuff was born out of it.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the positive. It's just that we had to go through the thing.
The envelope pushing so that the things that would come after you could work with a radically different style of stuff that wouldn't be jarring or off-putting as badly.
Right.
Okay,
Exactly.
Fair
Yeah.
enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yep. It's a thing.
It's
but
a thing.
You know, it's out there. I will say this. I am glad I am glad I have watched that. You know, I'm glad that is in my database of things in the right that I can. Oh, okay, that was that thing that happened at that time. That you can, you know, it's worth it if just for that.
Right.
For understanding that bit of history.
Which again, strings. You know, there's bits and pieces that you can glean from that. So that
Yep.
I'm perfectly satisfied with having watched it.
Okay. Yeah.
And thank goodness it wasn't 2 hours long.
Yeah. Thank God. I think we both, all three of us would have been
Both?
gibbering idiots by the
Yeah.
end of it. Just like Klein.
2 hours.
No. Yeah.
Can I have my own feeding tube? No, I don't want
Yeah, an hour and 20 into that, it would have been. So
Yeah.
this Saturday, we're not doing PWs anymore. I can't do it, guys. I'm not gonna. I can't get through this.
We're just going to scream incoherently into the mics for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Three notes later, throw the pencil out the window. Yeah. I'm not taking notes on this.
It's no Photon the Idiot Menace, but
No.
you know that's a whole other
Yeah.
thing to talk about. And yeah, Panty and Stocking, Afro Samurai, definitely in that vein.
Which I enjoyed parts of Afro Samurai. I didn't have a
Yeah,
problem.
yeah.
Panty and
Yeah.
Stocking, I never could get into it.
It's
I don't
just
know
odd.
Yeah.
It's just odd. It's
Yeah.
just an odd thing.
To me,
and it,
Panty and Stocking is the kind of show you watch, kind of like Dexter's Laboratory or the Powerpuff Girls, where you don't sit down and like binge the Powerpuff Girls, right? You don't sit down and binge a lot of those
Right.
American cartoons. You just see bits and pieces, and you'll end up
Yeah.
probably watching the entire thing, and you may watch a few episodes here and there. But it's not meant to be like, you know, I'm going to understand the plot.
Okay. I was
Yeah,
gonna say because
no,
I
it's-
love Dexter's Lab and Powerpuff
Oh, me
Girls.
too. Oh, those are classics. There is okay.
So-
oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, are we actually going to finish talking about an anime in less than the runtime?
Yes, we are.
Very nearly, because
yeah.
it's pretty close.
Yeah.
In Dreams, which is the VR creation package. So you buy Dreams and you can like create VR experiences in Dreams and then play them. Just basically a how to make VR movies or games, whatever, in VR.
Okay.
One of the most popular is a complete recreation of Dexter's Laboratory.
Cool.
And you just walk all around as Dexter, you know, and all the inventions and all that.
That's actually kind of cool. That's
Music's
kind of
playing.
cool.
Wait a minute, I want to walk around as Dee Dee and break everything.
Diddy!
Ooh, ooh, ooh,
Get
what
back
does
here.
this button do? Ooh, 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 ooh. What does this button do? I know what this button does. It makes my brother cry.
All right, that is. Considering we're not talking about Dexter's Lab, I think we should leaves. So we'll be back in a little bit to talk about the spring anime, and which we're gonna do our spring anime draft and figure out what we think is going to be the big anime of the next season. So we'll be back in just a few minutes. See you then.
Woohoo.